Welcome everybody. This is Lessons from the Field. It's a series of interviews with a diverse array of guests who have a common thread, and that is a passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. And today we are featuring Bill Fitzsimmons. Bill is a 1983 Bachelor's of Pharmacy graduate from this college. He's currently founder of Tutela Pharmaceuticals and also co-founder of Azoth Immune Medicines. He also works for the college as an executive in residence, and of course Bill has a long history, a long career in pharmaceutical industry, and we'll be talking about that in a second. I'm going to be asking Bill a number of questions that will at least elucidate valuable insight, I think, for our guests, who include students and recent graduates, alumni, and friends of the College of Pharmacy. So let's go ahead and get started. Bill, first of all, thank you so much for taking time to join us today. I want to just start by giving you a chance to walk through your career. And briefly, I know that you've had a long, illustrious career. You're Legacy Award winner, one of the highest honors in the College of Pharmacy. So maybe just give us a general feel for the career that you've had.
Sure. Thank you, Glenn. I'm happy to do that. As Glenn mentioned, in 1983, I graduated from the College of Pharmacy. I immediately went into a PharmD program. And when I completed that, I was in Richmond, Virginia, and moved back to Chicago, which was my hometown, and started at Rush University Medical Center and spent 5 years there as a clinical pharmacist specializing in pharmacokinetics before joining the pharmaceutical industry in 1990, and spent 29 years working at Astellas Pharma in a lot of different capacities, mainly on the drug development and regulatory affairs side, always having some touch into transplantation immunosuppression, and retired from Astellas last year. At that time, I was heading the global regulatory affairs and quality assurance groups. And have now been working on a couple of startup companies trying to stay close to the pharmaceutical industry, one a not-for-profit and one focus more in transplant immunosuppression, and also working along with UIC on a number of different programs to try to give back to the university.
Well, thanks, Bill. Yeah, Bill has been giving back to the university his entire career, and as an executive at Astellas, was instrumental in helping us with student placement for clerkship students and fellows, and has done so much for the college over the years, and he still is doing that. So publicly want to thank Bill for that. The first question we wanted to get into, though, Bill, is maybe just following up on that introduction, is if you could just give us some of the highlights and things over your career, events or people who have really, what's given you the most satisfaction over your career?
Sure. At Astellas, those 29 years in the pharmaceutical industry, I think there's two key things that have given me the most satisfaction. One, when you're working in drug development, the approval and commercialization of a drug that you had input on is really very satisfying. And so for me, the first drug I worked on was tacrolimus, an immunosuppressant for organ transplant, which has now become the gold standard worldwide for transplantation. And just to have a small part of that and to touch the millions of people now who have been transplanted and have taken tacrolimus is really satisfying. That's really what it's all about in terms of the pharmaceutical industry and innovation. And then there's other drugs, of course, that I was able to work on that successfully have done just as well in the marketplace and really improve the lives of patients. And I think the second part of that has been the people that you work with, and particularly when you have an opportunity to help mentor and assist the younger generation of people in the pharmaceutical industry, and then watch their career grow, watch them thrive. Those two things, the approval of new drugs and the effect on patients, and then being able to work with great people and watch their careers blossom and they mature and thrive in the industry. Those two, I would say, are the most satisfying.
Well, thanks, Bill. The next question we've asked, I think, all of our guests, and that is, if you could tell us a little bit about how the time that you spent at UIC helped prepare you for your career, and maybe within that, because we have so many students who are interested in pharmaceutical industry as a career. And of course, you are somebody who is a great role model for that. If you could just reflect on that as you answer that question.
Sure. As I think about UIC, to me, again, there were a couple of things that were very influential and continue to be for me over the career. And one is the connections you make. I think you don't realize at the time, both the faculty and your fellow students are really lifelong connections. And you may not use them every day or every year, but over time, you end up reconnecting with people in all sorts of ways that you can never imagine. So I think that's a key part of what UIC has provided to me, faculty and colleagues, fellow students who have been lifelong collaborators in very different aspects of my career. The second part, and that's helped clearly in the pharmaceutical industry, but I think the second part of that is the educational foundation. To me, pharmacy, like several other healthcare professions, one of the great things is the lifelong learning and the challenges that go with that. But in order to be a lifelong learner, as the science evolves, you have to have that solid foundation. And what UIC was able to give to me from the College of Pharmacy was that foundation that allows me to now learn as the science evolves. You don't think, well, I'm going to use what you're learning there for the rest of your life, but you really do, whether it's a solid foundation, pharmacology or pharmacokinetics or different things like that. You end up using that years, 30 years literally for me down the line. And I think that's key, because if you go into industry, you have to learn about new drugs. Well, you may never have heard of that drug or that mechanism, but you know how the basic pharmacologic principles you learned, the pharmacokinetic principles, those still apply, and you simply apply them to a different mechanism or a different drug or a different disease state.
Yeah, so true. And the connections and the solid foundation, something that we've heard repeatedly from people that we've interviewed and our alumni, so thank you. Maybe getting back to your career and just following up and expanding on that, because we have so much interest in pharmaceutical industry as a career for our students, what would you point out, or what would you wish people or pharmacists to better understand about pharmaceutical industry?
Sure. Yeah, I think that some of the key things to understand about industry are the whole drug approval process. That's not well understood, I think, by many people and many pharmacists. Everything from how a drug is discovered, how it's developed, what the regulatory process is, when it's approved, how it's priced, what's the reimbursement, all that whole cycle, how it's manufactured, I think is not well understood and tends to be probably more complex than it needs to be many times. But as a pharmacist, I think it's important to appreciate all those different aspects. Another thing that's not understood is that the people that are working, the pharmacists and healthcare providers in the pharmaceutical industry, aren't doing it because they're trying to make money off of sick people, right? And sometimes you get that reputation. We're actually all in it for the same reason that people go out into practice, to try to help individuals who have diseases and conditions. We do it in a different way, right? To innovate and provide new drugs. We're not in direct patient care. And with that, I think it's important to understand there's not a good guy and a bad guy in this process. A lot of times people say, is the industry the dark side, right? And academia or practice, is that the light side? It's really not like that. It's all the different individuals and organizations that impact the patient and the care of that and the pharmaceutical care have a role to play, right? And you hope they do their role really well. And that's what the industry does in certain ways. That's what a pharmacist in a retail setting or a hospital setting does. And if they all work together, they can make that cycle work for a common goal. So it's not a good or a bad side. It's simply a different way, a different set of skills that you can apply, and all, again, with hopefully a common goal to say, what we're trying to do is what's best for patients out there, right? And people that are at the front lines have the direct patient impact, but people in the industry still provide important innovation to them.
Yeah, it's so true. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think you're right that oftentimes I think we, in the media, be focusing on, maybe the negative when we should look at the whole picture and think about how we all work together. So, Bill, following up on kind of some of your earlier points about how UIC prepared you for your career, and you mentioned the solid foundation and the networks is really being helpful as you move forward. But beyond that, obviously things change constantly within your positions. You've had to learn. I'm sure that you were tasked to move into new areas that were unfamiliar to you. And so how do you stay on top of that knowledge? How do you get the experience and expertise to continue to grow?
Yeah. I think it's an exciting challenge, and it's honestly, it's not easy. But what I've tried to do is try new things, and then with that, learn about them. So for instance, last year when I retired from Astellas, I said, I'm going to start a not-for-profit company. I had no idea how to do that. But it forces you to then go and learn what do you have to do to establish a not-for-profit. Or I'm now looking at a new mechanism as an example for inhibiting viral replication for coronavirus. I didn't know anything about coronavirus and the proteins involved in that viral replication, but I knew that there was a potential way that we can innovate to have a new molecule to do that. So I simply read about it and then reach out to all the experts in the world on that you can do that. And I think that's the wonderful part about having a network, an academic and scientific network, is that there's people that are willing to help you all over, and you just have to reach out for them. I've been very impressed by, without having any money to provide, for instance, how you can reach out to people and ask for their help, and they'll help you, particularly if you have a good cause, right, and a good reason for it. So I think it's a continuous read the literature, study, and reach out to the experts, and make sure you take into account their advice.
Great. Well, speaking of good causes, the next question I thought we could ask is, I mean, you have so much experience in healthcare, how the healthcare system works. We talked earlier about the different roles that we play, whether it's industry or practitioners and so forth. But obviously the healthcare system is not necessarily perfect. If there was one thing that you could change about healthcare, what would that be?
I think the one thing I would say is affordable access. What frustrates me the most oftentimes is we can do fantastic things scientifically, right? We can come up with a new innovation, but if we can't get it to the patient and they can't afford to get it and it's not administered, it does no good. And so even within the United States, but particularly outside the US as well, there's countries and patients who are suffering, and we have therapies that would help them, but we can't get it to them. So I think affordable access is the key thing to me.
Well, thanks. That's obviously hugely important, especially these days. But so let me just ask you, because you obviously have been successful your entire career. You retired from Astellas. You now are starting up a whole new drug company or two. So you obviously are still excited about what you can provide and difference that you can make. But what is it about pharmacy that still excites you? What is it that we can convey to the younger generation, those moving into the career, that really keeps us excited? So maybe you could reflect on some of those.
I think what excites me is the new therapies. And that's what's awesome about pharmaceutical care and pharmacists, is that they are really the stewards of that. And so we're able to take the exciting new science and figure out how can we best apply that? How can we best get it to patients who need it? I think that's the exciting area. What excites me about pharmacy, it lays the foundation for pharmaceutical care, and wherever the science takes us, we can follow that and help ensure that it's utilized for in the best way for those patients. And it might be providing the drug directly to the patient. It might be administering a vaccine, or it may be simply educating people about it. But as the science evolves, it gives pharmacists an opportunity to evolve for the future. And I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thanks, Bill. I think maybe just let me wrap this up with just opening up to you if you have any other comments or advice for our students or recent graduates, alumni, anybody out there that might be listening.
Sure. I think from the pharmaceutical industry perspective, for people who are interested in that potential career, look at it as getting your foot in the door. You won't find, no one knows their perfect job I never envisioned I would be in regulatory affairs or quality assurance. That was never a goal. I never had that on my career path, but it happens. So once you get your foot in the door, other doors will open and you'll try different things and learn what you like and don't like. Oftentimes the entry-level positions for pharmacists in the pharmaceutical industry are in an MSL type role or a medical information communication role. Even if those aren't the best for you, try them. And you might like them, you might not, but it gets your foot in the door into the industry. The other thing I would say is think about where, again, the science is evolving for the future. We are at the cusp and seeing the implementation of gene therapies that actually potentially could cure diseases. We're seeing more cellular therapies come out that might be cures or treatments of the disease that we never envisioned. We have to define the role of pharmacy in that type of pharmaceutical care. And no one's going to define it for us. This is an opportunity to lead. No one's going to say, we think the role of pharmacists is this and pull us in. We have to be out in front of that and say, how can we be the best steward of gene therapy, of cellular therapy for these diseases that are coming in the future? So I think define that role and you'll have a role for the foreseeable future, because these are exciting new therapies that are just on the cusp of really clinical introduction. They're just going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, wow, what great advice. Thank you, Bill. I mean, the opportunities that you've elucidated there for our students and others who might be interested in industry, obviously very clear and relevant. So thank you for taking time to spend with us today. I know that people are going to get a lot out of listening to this interview. You mentioned earlier that if folks have questions for you, we can refer them to you. So we'll let them contact us and then we can refer them on. And thank you for taking time to do that. I know that there may be people who do want to follow up with you as they often have in the past when I've seen them interact with you, whether it be students or others. So Phil, thank you so much, not just for this, but also for the support you've given to the college over the years and everything you do for us.
My pleasure. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate it.